Valletta, capital of the Mediterranean island of Malta, is also known as the City of Palaces. It was once inhabited in turn by the Phoenicians, Carthaginians, Greeks, Arabs, and Turks. In 1530, the Order of the Knights of Malta moved its main residence to this section of the island. In subsequent years, the city's fortifications were further developed. Malta's proud capital city was one of the first in Europe to be officially planned and designed on a drawing board. It was the brainchild of Francesco Laparelli da Cortona, a military architect of the Medicis and a pupil of Michelangelo. Malta's prehistoric epoch is demonstrated by its primeval stone temples and graves. They belong to the Menhir period that extended to the British Isles. The National Archaeological Museum contains various items that date back to the Stone Age, skulls and Magna Mater, priceless historic gems. The prehistoric Venus of Hagar Kim is particularly noteworthy, the image of a sleeping woman. Colourful chariots are a fascinating sight. The St. John's Co-Cathedral was built in 1577 by Glormu Cassar as a monastic church of the Order of the Knights of Malta. At the command of Pope Pius VII in 1816, this house of God was designated a cathedral. It was given the same privileges as the bishop's seat in Medina, thus its somewhat strange title of Co-Cathedral. Its splendid interior was financed by the profits gained from the Order's profitable attacks against Muslim trading ships. Along the side of the cathedral are 8 chapels that relate to various of the Order's welfare associations. The floor is particularly precious. It's covered with 375 marble memorial brasses in a variety of colours. From the inner city gate, a park-like avenue leads to the Argotti Botanical Gardens. They form part of the university's campus. In 1774, numerous unusual trees, plants and cacti from around the world were planted here. The garden extends as far as the fortified walls of the upper town. Several fountains adorn a park that was once the sole domain of the university's scholars. The medieval crusaders of Christianity left their traces everywhere. The steep steps are reminiscent of nearby Sicily, and the gold-yellow stone that is typical of Malta shines out brightly in the sunlight. Well-preserved noble houses such as the Casa Rocca Piccola provide a good insight into the life of the city's former elite. Flanked by cannon, the Auberge de Castille et Leon was once an inn for the Castilian knights and is now the home of Malta's Prime Minister. Soon after entering the city, the ruins of an opera house serve as a reminder of the tragedy of war. But the city's past splendor has been restored, and now traditional Maltese balconies adorn its magnificent buildings. One such building is the Museum of Fine Arts. It's well worth a visit, as it's one of the city's earliest palaces that once served as the residence for the order. Paintings and sculptures of Maltese and various foreign artists of the 12th century are on display. In 1821, the palace became the seat of the British occupying forces. And during the Second World War, the commander of the Mediterranean fleet resided here. The museum's basement features the history of the Order's hospital, and the heraldic Maltese cross is omnipresent. The Grand Master's Palace is the Order's largest building. Its mighty walls, set within the austere architecture of the 16th century, are adorned with wooden alcoves of Baroque design. Each of its inner courtyards is framed by the palace buildings that were once home to the Order's Grand Master. The magnificent armory corridor with its wall paintings and knight's armor highlights the Order's power and magnificence. Various portraits form a complete gallery of each of the Order's Grand Masters. The armory contains a fascinating collection of well-preserved armor and weaponry. The weapons and armor for 25,000 soldiers were once stored here, and several thousand items have survived to the present day. The lower Baraka Gardens on the bastion of the city wall are one of the city's few green areas. And there's a small Greek temple. The upper Baraka Gardens, located at the highest point of the city, provide a remarkable view across the Grand Harbour and its many fortifications. The former parade ground of the Maltese Knights is ideal for a stroll among numerous arcades, trees and fountains. The harbour is one of the largest natural harbours in the world. It's been used for 3 millennia and was the reason why the Order of the Knights of Malta settled here. The fjord-like peninsulas on the opposite side were inhabited even earlier. Mighty fortress walls rise up above the sea, surrounded by mighty surf that demonstrates the relentless power of nature both day and night. After the order had succeeded in fending off the Turks following the Great Siege of 1565, the Grand Master Jean de la Valletta ordered that the entire island be fortified. Situated on the northernmost point of the peninsula is the famous Saint Elmo Fort, a dominant feature of this coast. Throughout the centuries, it's been witness to many bloody battles and much courageous resistance. It reached its zenith during the time of the Knights of St. John, who expanded the fortress and made it almost totally impregnable. Its walls successfully fended off the Turks, and later the French blocked off the harbour entrance to the British fleet. During the Second World War, anti-aircraft artillery were positioned on the fort's upper levels to defend against both German and Italian bombers. Various old cannon indicate its turbulent past. Prior to the arrival of the order, the fort first originated under Spanish rule, as indicated by the architecture of several of its buildings. Various old flags, lances and rifles are still used today in frequently held Guardia parades. The War Museum is located in the northwestern section of the fort. Numerous souvenirs of the Second World War are exhibited here, such as a biplane, weaponry and various British military uniforms. The Sacra Infermeria and its 160-metre-long ward was the hospital for the Knights of St. John. It is one of the city's most remarkable buildings. Since its foundation in 1113, the Order of the Knights of St. John saw as its most important duty the care of the infirm. The hospital had its own pharmacy and strict hygiene was adhered to. Each member of the order, including the Grand Master, had to vow that they would spend one day a week in the care of the sick, in accordance with its name, a place of refuge for the Holy Ghost. Although quite plain-looking from outside, the building has a sunny inner courtyard and is the cultural centre of the city. The island's only theatre dates back to 1732. It's one of the oldest in Europe that is still in use today. And there's also a small museum. The magnificent interior and its artistically painted wooden boxes that provide seating for a congregation of 720 have witnessed many great theatrical and operatic performances. And there's a particularly special attraction: Malta's old-timer bus service. Starting from the bus terminal at the city gate, they travel to each corner of the island. The colourfully decorated and shiny chrome buses are one of Malta's most popular and endearing modes of transport. there's a whole array of them. Despite their old and noisy engines, they're still a reliable way to get around the island. The St. Paul's Shipwreck Church was designed by Glormu Cassar. It's dedicated to the legendary shipwreck of Paul the Apostle. Magnificent frescoes feature the life of St. Paul, as well as scenes inspired by the biblical account of the catastrophe that occurred just off the Maltese coast. A bone that is thought to be from the arm of St. Paul is also included in the church treasures. And this head is a reminder of his decapitation in Rome. The Pieta and Sliema yacht harbours are visible from the mighty walls of Valletta. These suburbs were founded less than 100 years ago. At the end of the 19th century, this area became popular with colonial functionaries and the new Anglophile middle classes. Blossoming tourism and the love of the Maltese for the sea helped to transform these sheltered bays into yacht harbours. Today, hemmed in among the newly built city, houses of British colonial design were built along a once far less populated coastline. Excursion boats embark from Sliema Bay. The natural harbour and fortified city are an equally impressive sight when viewed from the sea. Past a large island in the Bay of Mazamset. Here in Lazzaretto, the crews of the ships who travelled from the Orient were kept in strict isolation for 40 days in order to avoid contamination from the plague. The boat passes various fortified walls that stretch into the sea. These mighty bastions were erected by Maltese and Sicilian labourers, plus a number of foreign slaves. The papacy and various European dynasties contributed much finance to the project. Thus, this massive bulwark of Christianity was built in only a few years. The Grand Harbour, situated between the Senglia Peninsula, Vittoriosa, Calcara and a further rocky peninsula, was the Order's original base. This is the largest natural deep-water harbour in the world. It once sheltered huge fleets of warships, but today contains state-of-the-art cruise ships and huge luxury yachts. The shipyards once provided work for more than 13,000, and 5,000 are still employed here today. A large variety of ships are maintained here. The Senglia Peninsula is the first of the three cities, small and calm, but of great historical importance. In 1530, the Knights of St. John founded their first base here, following their expulsion from the Mediterranean island of Rhodes. city, located at the top of the island, is still entered via the defensive structure of Fort St. Michael. Although it has few tourist sites, Senglir is probably the most beautiful city in Malta, with its many pretty balconies and almost non-existent traffic. Palatial buildings, shady steps and arcades situated alongside the water's edge are an impressive sight. The ambience of the nights can still be felt here. Small fishing boats float peacefully on the calm water of the bay and awake an image of old Venice. It's as though time has stood still. This adjacent spit of land, Bergu, today's Vittoriosa, was one of the order's first settlements and was an ideal place for the defense of the harbour. Next to the former gunpowder magazine is the Baroque church of San Lorenzo, that is believed to be the oldest church in Malta. Narrow alleyways lead past the square of the Inquisitors, the Mizra i Reba, and the well-preserved inns of the Knights. On its landward side, Vittoriosa is protected by a mighty wall. The Provence Gate leads to the second of the three cities. A heavy iron chain once spanned between Bergu and Senglir. Thus, hostile Turkish galleys were hindered from entering the bay. When the Knights of St. John first obtained their fiefdom from the Spanish king, the Fort St. Angelo was a tiny fortress. It was subsequently expanded and improved. In May 1565, the Ottomans attacked with 200 ships, and a cruel siege began that continued for 4 months. Although they suffered many casualties, the knights withstood the larger forces of the Ottomans until the fleet arrived from Sicily and drove away the Sultan's army. Due to this victory, the further expansion of the Ottoman Empire was prevented, and Malta became Europe's great Christian bastion of defense. At the entrance to the harbour, Calcara is the island's third city. A calm, picture postcard bay, with beautiful houses lined up along the quay. The island's traditional fishing boat, the Lutzi, is made here, and modern yachts are also built in various small, privately owned shipyards. The boat trip finally comes to an end. This is the Ricasoli Fort, the final bastion of defense at the entrance to the harbour. The Hollywood movie Troy was filmed within its ancient walls. The Orient and the Occident have both left their traces in Valletta, a picturesque location carved from stone. The former City of Knights, in which the future joins with the past.